Some places look so peaceful, you would never believe they could become the scene of a real-life nightmare. June 22, 1977. Two college friends were living the kind of adventure most people only dream about. They weren't rich. They weren't famous. They were just two young women riding their bicycles across America, chasing freedom 1 mile at a time. The plan sounded pretty awesome. Start in Oregon. Ride thousands of miles across the country. Make memories that would last forever. At least, that was the plan. By the 7th day of their journey, both of them were completely wiped out. Their legs hurt. Their backpacks felt heavier than ever. And the road just kept going. All they wanted was a quiet place to crash before the sun disappeared. Late that afternoon, they reached a beautiful area outside Oregon. The place looked almost too perfect. A calm river flowed through the trees. The evening air felt cool. Birds were slowly disappearing into the forest as daylight faded. Honestly, it looked like the kind of place you'd save as your phone wallpaper. One of the women smiled. This should do. The other wasn't so sure. Something about the place felt kinda weird. It wasn't an official campground. There weren't many people around. And once the last few visitors packed up and left, the whole area became strangely empty. She quietly suggested they keep riding until they found another campsite. Maybe somewhere safer. Maybe somewhere with other campers nearby. But after spending the whole day on their bikes, nobody wanted to ride another mile. They figured they were just overthinking things. After all, what could possibly happen in a peaceful park like this? So they unpacked their gear. Set up their small tent. Cooked a simple dinner. For a little while, everything felt completely normal. A few people passing by even stopped to chat. Some were surprised to hear that two young women were crossing the country alone on bicycles. Most wished them good luck before driving away. Then, the sun finally disappeared. And everything changed. The sounds of people laughing. Gone. The cars driving past. Gone. Even the birds had gone quiet. Now there was only darkness. The soft sound of the river. And miles of empty forest surrounding them. That's when both women noticed something they couldn't explain. Neither one wanted to say it out loud at first. But eventually, one finally whispered. "Do you feel that?" The other looked up immediately. "Yeah. I do." It wasn't fear exactly. It was something deeper. Like that strange feeling you get when your brain is trying to warn you before your eyes notice the danger. Like someone was watching. They looked around the campsite. Nothing. The road was empty. The trees barely moved. There wasn't a single person in sight. Still, that creepy feeling refused to go away. For a few minutes, they talked about leaving. Seriously. It would have been the smart move. But they were exhausted. Their bodies were begging for sleep. One of them laughed nervously. "We're probably just freaking ourselves out." The other nodded. "Yeah, we're gonna feel silly about this tomorrow." So they zipped up the tent. Turned off their flashlight. And tried to get some sleep. Outside, the river kept flowing. Crickets filled the silence. Everything looked peaceful. But sometimes, the quietest nights hide the darkest secrets. And somewhere beyond the trees, someone had already seen them. Someone who had no plans of letting them leave when morning came. And sometimes, the worst things don't come with warning signs. They just show up when you're least ready. It was around 11:30 at night. The campsite was dead silent now. No voices. No footsteps. Just the river flowing in the background and the occasional sound of insects in the dark. Inside the tent, both women were finally asleep. Exhaustion had basically knocked them out. For a moment, it almost felt like the creepy feeling from earlier was just in their heads. Almost. Then. Something changed. A faint sound broke through the silence. At first, it was distant. Like tires rolling on gravel somewhere nearby. One of them stirred in her sleep. Then the sound got closer. A lot closer. The engine wasn't slowing down. It was speeding up. Right toward the campsite. One of the women suddenly woke up, confused. Her eyes barely adjusted before she heard it. The roar of an engine getting louder and louder, way too fast for a normal car passing by. Then. Headlights flashed through the tent fabric. Bright. Blinding. And getting closer in seconds. "What the?" she whispered, barely awake. But there was no time to process anything. The vehicle didn't stop. It came straight off the road. Straight into the park. Straight toward them. Out of nowhere, the truck jumped over obstacles, weaving like it wasn't even trying to avoid anything. And then. Impact. The truck slammed directly into the tent. The force knocked everything off balance in a second. Poles snapped. Fabric collapsed. The world turned into chaos. One moment they were asleep. The next moment, their entire world was crushed under metal and weight. Dust, fabric, and broken gear filled the air. The tent was pinned down hard. Too hard. There was no space to move. No space to think. Just panic. One of them screamed. The other was trapped, barely able to understand what was happening. "Get off us!" One of them shouted into the darkness. But there was no response. Just the sound of the engine still running. Still there. Still close. And then. The engine stopped. Silence. That silence was somehow worse. Because now they knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some drunk driver losing control. This was intentional. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming out of the vehicle. Metal clinked in the dark. Something was being picked up. Something heavy. Something dangerous. Axe-like. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just a crash. This was something else entirely. Something planned. Something personal. And whoever had just driven into their campsite wasn't done yet. When everything goes silent after chaos, that's usually when the real horror begins. After the crash, everything felt unreal. The tent was crushed under the weight of the truck, twisted fabric and broken poles trapping them underneath like a cage. One of them could barely move. The other was pinned so tightly, it felt like the air was being squeezed out of her chest. And then, the door opened. A shadow stepped out of the truck. Slow. Deliberate. No panic. No confusion. Just control. That's when they realized, this wasn't an accident at all. This was planned. The footsteps came closer. Heavy boots on dirt. Then metal scraping. Something was in his hands. Something sharp. An axe. "Hey! Stop! Leave us alone!" One of them screamed, voice shaking between fear and shock. But there was no answer. Only silence, and breathing. The attacker moved first toward one of them. The one who was less trapped. She tried to crawl back, tried to get away, but there was nowhere to go. The night turned into chaos again. Screams filled the campsite. Panic. Confusion. Pure survival instinct. The other woman, still pinned under the wreckage, could only hear it happening beside her. She couldn't see clearly. But she could hear everything. Every strike. Every sound. Every moment that felt like it would never end. "Please, stop, take anything you want," one of them begged, voice breaking completely. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered to him except what he came there to do. Then suddenly, he stopped. For a second, everything went quiet again. Like even he was deciding something. Then the truck shifted. He moved it slightly, freeing space. And that's when one of them realized, this was her only chance. She didn't think. She just moved. Adrenaline took over. Even with broken bones and pain shooting through her body, she pushed herself out of the wreckage. Every movement hurt. Bad. But fear was stronger than pain. She dragged herself toward the road. Step by step. Breathing uneven. Vision blurry. But she kept going. Behind her, she could still hear movement. Still hear him. Still there. Somehow, she made it to the edge of the road. And then. Headlights. A car. She waved desperately, barely standing. The vehicle slowed down. Two teenagers inside stopped instantly when they saw her. And what they saw, they would never forget. She was covered in blood. Barely able to stand. Barely alive. They rushed out to help without hesitation. Moments later, they found the second woman near the destroyed campsite. Barely conscious. Both were rushed to the hospital. What followed was a long, brutal fight for survival. One of them underwent emergency brain surgery. The other suffered multiple broken bones, collapsed lung, and injuries that should have ended her life that night. But somehow, they survived. When police finally arrived, there was almost nothing left. Just tire tracks, and silence. No clear face. No weapon recovered. No easy answers. Just one truth that would haunt everyone involved. Someone had driven into that campsite on purpose. And disappeared into the dark like it never happened at all. And even years later. The question never really went away. Why them? And who was he? Because in Oregon that night, a peaceful camping trip didn't just turn into a nightmare. It turned into a mystery that refused to die.